to the flag, we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll do that, and then David will do a moment of silence. So, 1, 2, 3, when he pledges. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America,
to the
republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Okay, David.
I'll ask everybody to observe a moment of silence in honor of our police, our emergency medical services, those who serve in the military, and our healthcare workers, and especially remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Does anybody want to say anything now before John takes over? Because it's now and forever.
I do.
Whoever said that, go ahead and do
I
it.
do. I would like to, for the record, last night when we were talking about replacing the chipper machine, I used the term depreciation, and John Herzog kind of jumped on my case a little bit. I believe he accused me of trying to blow smoke up his butt, to use his exact words. So I wanted to just clarify, and John Altschul can correct me, but the use of depreciation is a term used in nonprofit accounting to account for the useful life of fixed assets. In fact, U.S. accounting standards require the external reporting that we post depreciation. And then as a policy for East Goshen Township, we do what we call funding depreciation, which means we fund to replace those assets after they achieve their lifetime usefulness. And so when I was talking about the chipper being depreciated, I wasn't talking about any tax advantage. I was talking about the fact that it's fully depreciated and fully funded as a replacement and was not an extraordinary expense to our budget. So I just wanted to observe that and provide that input.
Yeah, David, thank you. I myself have been around long enough to know exactly what it is. I don't know if the newer folks understand that. If they don't, it's something that John should explain today. I suspect that most people know by now what we're all talking about. I don't know if John Herzog is here to hear what you just said, but nonetheless, it'll show up in the minutes at any event, and we'll just carry on. Does anybody else have any comments about anything? Thank you.
We have another caller excuse me,
Who is
Michelle, we
that?
just have another caller. I need to have them identify themselves. Caller who just
Please.
entered the meeting with phone number ending in 724. Can you please state your name?
Hi, Joanne Mercer.
Hi, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. Hi. Good morning. It's Marty Shane. We're ready to start the meeting. Does anybody else have anything to say?
Yes, actually, I'm wondering if we're live streaming this.
We are.
We are. That's how the folks on the outside.
Yeah, the folks on the outside can't see it.
That's correct.
Have the live stream going. Hold on.
We get more people for this than we get for the meetings. Hey, John, half of East Goshen must be looking forward to your presentation. That's all I have to say. If everybody's on board and nobody else,
I don't know why they can't see. Excuse me, Marty.
I don't know either.
It is live streaming. I'm on our YouTube channel now. Yeah, I have it right now. So.
And Marty, John Herzog is on as well.
Okay, we got everybody then. Just Michelle or whoever, tell John that David made a statement this morning.
I heard it.
So Marty, are we ready to go?
Yep, it's all yours now.
Yeah.
So if Susan's ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
So, as summarized, I'm just going to spend 5 to 10 minutes just summarizing my memo. And for those of you who aren't normally on these calls or haven't participated in these calls before, this is an exercise that we do once a year We forecast out for 10 years, to the best we can. It's an inexact science. What the long-term expense trends are and what the long-term revenue trends are as best we can figure, and try to get a gauge of what the long-term financial health of the township is. And we also, it's an opportunity to kind of take a deep breath and think about what are the spending priorities or lack thereof over the next 5 to 10 years. And using this as sort of the basis for the guidance that staff get from the board is the basis for developing the 2021 budget, as well as the 5-year capital improvement program about capital investments that the township needs to make to provide services. So, I mean, I guess the 800-pound gorilla in the room obviously is crisis and, what impact that's going to have on township revenues. About this in BOS meetings now a couple of times, and I still think it's too early to really wrap our heads around the revenue hit is going to be. I mean, certainly there will be a revenue hit, but at the same time, there are green shoots appearing. One of which is that this surprised me is the real estate market continues to turn. And during the shutdown, there were properties selling, not at the level that we would expect, but there were still properties selling. So transfer tax revenue didn't fall off the cliff that I expected. Or an income tax, it's still too early. We will really know that, really have a sense of the problem, and won't know the depth of the problem until Susan, you want to let that person in?
Certainly. Caller who just entered the meeting with phone number ending in 185. Can you please state your name?
Kate Minchell.
Hello, Kate, this is Marty Sheen. Good morning. Welcome to the team.
Good morning. Sorry for being a little late. Thank you for including me.
So
We just started, well, John just started, so you haven't missed a heck of a lot.
So the forecasts, what I've done, normally I don't do a revised 2020 current year forecast in this model, but because of the budget cuts that the board last month, as well as the police arbitration award, and what I sort of think reading the tea leaves is going to happen to revenues, I did rejigger the 2020 numbers. So bottom line is this shows us falling below our the minimum fund balance that's outlined in our financial policies in 2026, and then running out of money in 2028, absent, reduction in expenses, increase in taxes, or some combination of the two.
Hey, John, do you want to explain to everybody the policy on the what you refer to as the policy on the money policy, and
Sure.
who's responsible for it, and what it means and what it says, so everybody
Sure.
knows.
So our financial policies last updated in December of last year, but really have been in place one way or another since 2013. Require that the township on the operating side, including our operating reserve fund, our rainy day fund, have 25% of our annual revenues in reserve as a minimum fund. Now we're in the 70s, we're about 70%. So, but I do want to qualify this and exercise we go through every year. And every year since I've been here, and even well before I was here, we've always forecast that we'd run out of money in 8 or 9 years from now. And that's never come to pass. So I do think that there's a way of looking. It's important that we take these projections seriously. At the same time, there are one-time, windfalls from property transfer tax revenue when an apartment building sells or things like that, or it doesn't snow for a winter or those kind of things. So, history suggests these forecasts are pessimistic. So with that said, I mean, I have a lot of items highlighted here, and there's some that I really would like to talk about. And before I do that, does the board have any questions of me about the assumptions that I used or the forecast in general?
I think it's kind of important to comment that the reason that we project running out of money is that we run a deficit budget and then we fund the deficit each year out of operating reserve and capital funds. And so that's how that happens. So, because that leads to a point that I want to talk about later.
I wanted to know if you happen to have a PowerPoint that can be shown to the residents.
Yes, there is one.
Michelle, can you, for this?
Are you able to show the chart to the residents or not?
Oh, yeah. Susan, can you scroll?
Yes, I can scroll through the agenda. I have it up. I'm just not sure. You have to let me know what page you want to be on. The big chart, is that what you want?
Yeah, remember that the residents are on, they can't see they can see it on the live stream, but they can't see.
I was just going to say someone can watch it on the live stream.
So as this shows us, and if, can you shrink that a little bit, Susan? Or,
Sure.
so that you can see the full.
Yep.
Yeah, so if as it says in 2028, this is when we get negative, we're totally out of money. But who knows is the bottom line. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about in the memo. First, last night the board approved, basically gave marching orders to Mike Lynch, who's a representative of the Westchester Area Council of Governments, to negotiate essentially, or be part of a negotiation for a power purchase agreement. This was one of the strategies identified in the Cadmus report, and basically this would essentially we would collectively, all the municipalities in the region, would hire a developer to develop some sort of solar field somewhere, presumably in Pennsylvania, and that would, as history shows from the experience of SEPTA, Philadelphia, Penn State, and a handful of public entities in Pennsylvania, this will reduce our overall electricity spend very, very quickly in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. But there is another of other strategies, clean energy strategies, highlighted in that report. I do want to just remind, and these are not reflected in my forecast, but I do want to remind you that for an EV charging we had spec'd out last year was $35,000. That doesn't include any rebate from the state. But there are ways to do it to the charging station so that fees would recover the cost. We charge you $5 per fill up, quote unquote, to recover the cost of that investment. Another one was about solar panels on the roof, either of the Public Works Annex, the court building, or the township building, the flag building. And again, we spec that out. It would have about a 15-year payback period. So I wanted to get a sense of this as staff. You gave us marching orders to sort of start thinking about these things, identify cost-effective clean energy strategies. Are there, or do you have any thoughts on this issue broadly?
John, I suggest, since David and I went through the pre-meeting as the part of the finance team, that Michelle and John Herzog have the first shot at asking questions, and then David and I can go after that if we need to.
John, I'll just make a quick comment that one of the options for a power purchase agreement would be what's called a virtual power purchase agreement, where we don't fund the infrastructure, we just basically lease it from a third party but follow the funding as if it were a power purchase agreement. So that's another option on that would be possibly less expensive and less
John,
risk.
the other thing too, I think you might want to mention is the fact that we have not made any financial commitments to this yet. We have last night we only approved the work that the group did, and you might explain who the group the group is in the Westchester COG. You might explain to the people that don't know what that is, because
Well,
that's what's going to
it's the municipalities in the Westchester area school district. But
I would like to say something.
sure,
Go ahead,
I'm just
Michelle.
going to tag onto what David said. That's something that I've talked with John also about as well, with going with a vendor and leasing solar panels.
Yeah.
I think that would be an option
Third
to
party.
explore. Yeah.
you want, that's something that we can definitely explore, that third party ownership, at least get a price quote on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't have any other issues with any of the other Cadmus suggestions. I think that they were all good suggestions.
This is Marty. Let me say something. Generally speaking, where I come from on these various items, and you'll know as the meeting progresses, and I say something, why I'm saying what I'm saying. With respect to the capital projects, in my life, if it's not a 5-year payback period of time, I don't consider it at all. I will not vote for anything that's more than 5 years. So most likely the solar system is a lot longer than 5 years. So that's just my own personal perspective. I am not suggesting, unless you want to, that's for the board to do. But that's the way I look at it. The
Why
other
don't I
thing is
also-
on the operating expenses, I look at it in 2 ways. There's the needs and the wants. The needs are what have to get done to keep us going. The wants are what we'd like to do, but it's not necessary to keep us going. Right now, until we get a better handle on the situation, I will approve no wants, but I will definitely approve the needs, because we've got to keep the township running. So there's 2 aspects of it. You'll see during the course of the day that I will weigh in on what I think is appropriate, and that's for you to consider. It is not a decision by the board.
Okay. We'll also be getting some quotes about these, like, I'm going to look into also an EV charging station and how that would work financially if we were to charge per fill up to recover the costs. I'm curious about how that would work. So I'd like to reach out to a vendor as well and that for the budget planning for this year's budget season or next year's budget season. Okay, the next thing is kind of, Susan, can you scroll down to like the bottom of this where it shows how we compare, East Goshen Township compares to other municipalities on how we fund the fire company? I think it should be the last. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that was it. Those 3 pages. Yeah, these ones. So yeah, so as you see here, East Goshen Township is right now spending on a per capita basis, 17, a little less than $18 to fire companies. If you compare that to other municipalities in our area, we're way below that. Obviously, we're way below what other communities contribute. I mean, East Whiteland, it says $12.50. If you scroll up just a little bit, East Whiteland is $12.50. But what that doesn't include is the fact that they're also paying $1.9 million in personnel costs to the firefighters. So if you throw that in, it's a giant number. You know, obviously we've had conversations with the fire company about their own cash crunches as we project forward. So they came to us with a proposal for increasing both, not just us, but West Goshen, Westtown, Willistown, to increase the contribution to Goshen. 2021, they asked for basically $500,000 collectively above what we contribute, what municipalities contribute now, and then an escalation clause of 8% after that. I think 8% is a little high. We did at the staff level with West Goshen and Westtown had a meeting, and what we sort of suggested is we recognize that Goshen has a potential cash crunch issue. Why don't we sort of another thing that Goshen wanted us to do is to explicitly pay for all of their net operating costs. So their non-capital operating costs after any reimbursements for ambulance calls. I think the concern that staff had was once you start to do that, you're effectively tethering yourself to the fire company in a dangerous way financially 5 years down the road. So I think our proposal that's laid out in that additional memo would increase the funding levels by about $250,000 gradually over a 2-year period. So about $125,000 a year over 2 years. And then after that would just go up by CPI or inflation. So much less than the 8%. So this, I think, addresses Goshen's concerns. And we're also making sure the allocation of those costs would be linked to a combination of calls for service and the real estate valuation of the areas served in the 4 municipalities. Obviously, property damage from fire calls is, driving that. So,
Is that a 50, John, is that a 50-50 split?
50-50 weighted, yeah. Now, what it really impacts actually the most is West Goshen. I don't want to throw our neighbors under the bus, but their contributions to Goshen relative to ours are much less. So their increase would be disproportionately more than ours. So the idea now is that West Goshen Casey's going to talk to his board about this. Rob Pingar and Westtown is going to talk to his board. So hopefully in the months ahead, in the 3 or 4 months ahead, as we start to get numbers and spreadsheets for next year's funding, we can have an agreement. But I did want to take the pulse of our board. Does that proposal that I've outlined in that memo, does that seem reasonable to you?
John, has the fire company been aware of what you proposed? And if so, what was their reaction?
I had a conversation with the executive director a few days ago saying he did see it. I think, he wanted more money, needless to say. I said, this is the staff proposal and,
John, if we accept this proposal, which I, given the fact that we talked long and hard about this at the pre-meeting, I don't know. I mean, they got a real problem, and it's got to be solved. So the question becomes: is if they don't like this, or they turn it down, so to speak, and I don't know if they can or not, but if they can and they do, what alternative do we have? Because I think that where you are today is probably a good place to be when you look at it from the big picture standpoint, even though you're talking about a fair amount of money in a short period of time. But I don't know that we have much choice in that regard. But once you get past that, it becomes a really big problem. And I'm curious as to what the fire company thinks going forward if we don't get that approved.
If they don't get, I don't have a simple answer for you.
Okay.
I mean, given the budget, constraints that we have, I think that going up by East Goshen's share going up by $250,000 is going to be at 8%, and then 8% increases after that. That's going to escalate really, really quickly. What I did in my budget forecast is I used, the staff proposal for the fire company funding. And, we still know what that does as far as the impact on township finances.
Well, I think there's two things. I think one, you guys did a great job. I think it's very fair. And number two, you kind of alluded to it. I want to make sure that everybody understands what you said. It doesn't tether us to the fire company, which is a big deal. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, John, but that's becomes a big deal that some of us were familiar with over time. So I think it's a great proposal. I wish it wasn't as large as it was, but I don't know that we have much choice about it. And secondly, it's very important to do it so we don't have any responsibility directly for the operation of the fire company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I support the staff proposal as well.
I don't know if you two have any comments about this, because this may be new to you. Go ahead and ask whatever questions you need to ask.
Well, I'm trying. I've actually been on the inside of this with John a little bit, talking about this on a regular basis. I think that the staff proposal is more than reasonable. And I don't believe that any amount of money that we offer as an increase will be turned away. Moving forward, after the initial outlay of about $280,000 in the first and second year, I think that 2% increases are reasonable. We have to keep it tied to the, we have to keep it tied to inflation.
Yeah, John can explain what he uses for inflation.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the Social Security, increase in Social Security, which is, typically hovers around 2%.
And keep in mind that this is, we're talking about 10-year forecast right now. There's a lot going on in the emergency services and fire over the next 10 years, including some either voluntary or involuntary consolidation, and also aspects around what the county might be planning in the next 10 years. So I view this as kind of a good way to think about it for now, but it's in some cases, it's a little bit of a moving target going forward. And it could actually be beneficial going forward. But, we see the decrease of the volunteer fire department and the increase in the paid and the cost of equipment and those types of things. So I think I consider this kind of an interim to be discussed further over the next 10 years. It's going to be a little bit of a moving target.
Bear in mind, John, I don't know if the numbers reflect this, but they may, that we have the police arbitration to figure out what it's going to be as soon as it's done, the work is done, and then we have this increase. So the cost of emergency services is going up, and it's going to be significant.
Yeah.
So I just want everybody to know that, because it's a big driver now. It's even going to become a big driver later. David raised a very good point. There is conversations in the county, and I may have been the one that brought this up about 5 years ago, that the county may become taking over a larger portion of this, or initially it'll be mergers and acquisitions that go together in order to drive these costs down so that they become more manageable. So that's what David's referring to, and I would think that over the lifetime of our 10-year period, that there'll be a change in what the county does from what it does today, which is, we all know what they do. And it could well be that we're merged with other fire companies. Could be that other people are merged. And there's a lot of duplicity of equipment, and it just can't continue that way, or everybody's going to go broke. So that's what's really going on in the world.
Okay, so it sounds like, reading the tea leaves, the board is generally supportive of the staff proposal. I'll just communicate that to and Casey and see if they had a chance to talk about it with their respective boards too.
Correct. I think that's accurate, John.
And that's in your projection, right, John?
Yeah, I did include that.
Okay.
I would think that you can, if you're writing up the minutes of this meeting, you can write that as the final, conversation. There was no vote taken, but it was a conversation anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a vote until we actually adopt the budget. So
correct.
Okay, so this is more just like for your radar, but we got the comp plan coming up in 4 years or so, probably early 2024. It's typically 50 to 70% funded by the county vision partner grant, but this is more of like a work, less of a financial thing than more of just a work thing. Gordon is going to be, up to his ears again with that. So any comments on the comp plan as we start to think about updating it?
I do have a comment on that.
Okay.
There's nothing in the township code that says we have to update this on any kind of a basis.
Well, the municipal planning code, the municipal planning code states it as best practice. I don't, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe we're legally required to update it, but we're expected to.
It is not.
There is no penalty if we don't do it.
Yeah.
That's correct.
You don't have to do it every 10 years.
That is correct. However, you got to be a little bit careful if you move out too far, because the vision part for going too far in the future when you theoretically are supposed to do it every 10 years. And that becomes an expensive proposition. But nonetheless, it's one of those things that has to happen somewheres along the line, but you don't want to go too far out. Now, I think John might have talked about a 70%, 70 for 30 contribution. I happen to be on the Chester County Planning Commission and the subgroup that evaluates these things. I would suspect that the most we're going to get would be 60%, which means we have to pay 40, and it may be even less than that. The county is well aware of the fact that we in East Goshen, because of the trail and other things, the dams, the work we have done before, that we have gotten a lot of money over time. And there's a lot of townships that don't have the same financial situation that we do, that they pay much greater attention to than the ones that you can, like ourselves and others like us. So it's a little bit complicated. So don't assume that you're going to get a whole lot of money, but you probably will if you do it properly, and don't broadcast the fact that we already have received a lot of grants and we've been in the Vision Partnership Program before. So I warn everybody that's a cautionary tale, but it's just the way it works.
Okay, sounds good.
John, I would just add real quick, this is Mark Gordon. I would just add that the Municipal Planning Code does state that a municipal or multi-municipal comprehensive plan shall be reviewed at least every 10 years and sent to continuous municipality. So that basically is you review it, determination if it needs to be updated. There's no requirement that you update it. It's a requirement to review it and make a decision on how you're going to move forward.
Thank you for that
Mark, who reviews
clarification,
it?
Mark.
Who reviews it?
The municipality. So you can delegate that as the Board of Supervisors to the Planning Commission, who would then make a recommendation on what to do. In the last 20 years, we've updated each time because we found it necessary to do updates.
Yeah, I don't know what that would. I don't know what if we did it now, for example, what that would show whether we did or didn't. But if around the 10-year mark, you're going to have to do that. And if there's no oversight from anybody, you just review it yourself and everybody accepts your word for it. Is that the way it works, Mark?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, you do have to include the county on whatever you decide, and you want to send it to continue. So you have to determine what you're going to do every 10 years and send contiguous municipalities, the services, and the county planning commission. So whatever you decide to do, you got to let those folks
they'll definitely review it. So it's not just your own summary. It's they're going to get entered the pile, and you're not going to be able to blow smoke up the rear end. I tell you.
No,
that
it's your own review within the municipality. And if you make a decision like we're going to update it, you let people know we're going to update it, and you provide them an opportunity to comment. That's what we did the last time, and in the last two times, we made a decision to make updates.
So, I mean, it sounds like just as a practical matter with this, it's a ways out, but why don't we in sometime around January 1st, 2024, let's dust this off, talk about it at the board level, talk about it at the planning commission level, and figure out what we're going to do. I don't think at this point we need to make any decisions too far away. Does that sound fair?
That sounds fair.
I agree.
I think it's important to note that the comprehensive plan is used. It's just not put on the shelf. It drives a lot of what we do and how we set priorities for projects in the township. It has in the past and should in the future. Even looking at the sustainability certificate that we got, one of the questions is, do we have a comprehensive plan and do we update it in accordance with the municipal codes? And so, we get kind of credit when we're applying for grants and when we're doing the sustainability determinations, and it's used to as a priority in budgeting and setting priorities as far as projects in the township. So it's an important document at the end of the day.
I want to
Absolutely.
echo what David said, because for the first time that I can remember since I've been on the board, after the fact, when we did a lot of work on the comprehensive plan to get it in position to be where it was, all of a sudden there's people that took exceptions to some things that were in the comprehensive plan. Well, once it's done, and it becomes the roadmap for the future. So from the supervisor standpoint, it becomes really important to look at capital projects and things that you're going to do, and to make sure, although we did, is to make sure there's as much resident participation as is expected. And this was done in this particular case, but it's very clear that people after the fact were paying attention to it, and it really is important that these same people or others pay more attention to it this time, and the supervisors really have a challenge, because I would think that anybody in the external world or residents are going to pay very close attention to what goes in that plan, because I think they now know that becomes an important document, and David's absolutely correct in what he says.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on.
I agree with you. John, are you agreeing with that? Is that it's going to be?
Yeah, it's not my place to agree. Oh, sorry, John Herzog, sorry. Got confused.
Okay, very good.
That's no commitment on our part, though.
Right. Let's wait. We got time. Okay, next, so, we adopted the park and open space master plan, 5 years ago. There's still a couple of outstanding things on there. I think the biggest one is like a band shell for the amphitheater. There's other smaller things. But, Jason has looked around and generally he thinks, we could probably get some grant sort of improvements, but they'd still have 50% local matches. So I haven't included anything about park upgrades in, but I did want to get your thoughts about what we do with that park master plan, in particular, the amphitheater band shell. Is this Jason should be working on? Is this something we should be programs? Please advise.
Hey, John, I saw in the PSATS magazine a couple months ago, the one township did a really cool thing. They took basically half of a farm silo and did a poured concrete slab, and then stuck a half of a silo roof as an amphitheater. It was really kind of a cool solution, and I think they even got that donated by a local builder of silos.
Oh, yeah?
And so it's there's some kind of cool solutions that we might think about.
Well, let me ask a question to Jason. Is that, I was thinking about this as a, we'd get a park contractor, a professional contractor come in and do a standard band shell, but are there outside the box things that you can think of?
I as a blanket statement, I would say, let's be creative and look at alternative solutions that could either be fun and unique and also save township funds. So if there was a situation where an area donor wanted to donate some structure or facility that could safely provide the amphitheater needs, and meet code and safety requirements and all that, I'd be 100% behind having something that's local and unique and, unique to East Goshen. I don't know at this time of any of those options other than the one that David just said, which sounds pretty neat. But we could definitely explore that for sure.
Yeah, we could send out an email on Constant Contact and ask if anybody's willing to donate half a silo to the township.
Yeah.
There you go.
What happened to the other half of the silo?
Exactly.
Other than the Friends of East Goshen, are we allowed to do side projects like that?
Yeah, Friends of East Goshen is that vehicle for making those donations, so that there's someone can take a tax deduction. I don't know. But I don't know how Friends would even go about. It would have to be one of those things that I just don't know how it would work. But
well, I think that one of the things that would make it work is we had to postpone, cancel Community Day. And this could be an opportunity to still reach out to people and say, hey, look, you know what? Community Day has been canceled, but one of the ways you can still help your community, even though we're not going to have fireworks this year, perhaps you would be willing to make a donation for a band shell.
You know what? That's a good idea. Let's do a friends meeting and talk about this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
John, as this, I kind of waited here because this is where things, you got to understand where my perspective is and where we are today, talking about what the impact is going to be on the virus situation on our current performance, financial performance. Other than what's included in the bond funding, there's nothing you have to do in the park that's essential to the operation of the township. It's a great park. I love it. I hate saying what I'm going to say, but I cannot approve any other expenditure but what's included in the bond funding because they're all wants. There's nothing that's a need about a park. It is what it is. It's a beautiful thing. Amphitheater or whatever would be a great addition, but it's one of those things now, given the financial situation, that I have to look at it as a want, not a need. So I am not for anything in the park beyond what's in the bond fund that we have.
I agree.
That's where I am.
I might take a different position on it and say you could have made the same argument about our playground. And it's the pride of our township. So, and I think the park is a pride of our township. And when you survey people who want to buy into a community, the three priorities are they want open space, they want parks and trails to walk on, and they want a town center. Those are the three main things that people want. And as I said, the park is the pride of our township. So, if there are creative ways to think about this, I don't think we need to go run out and spend $65,000 in a band shell. If there are ways that we can think about this to solve the problem, I think we should do that.
I agree with that.
I just want
I think
everybody to
Friends of
agree.
East Goshen is the way to go.
I just want everybody to know that I'm a firm believer in the park and everything that David said. However, part of this meeting today is to recognize the fact that we could be in financial difficulties depending upon what happens with this virus and so forth and so on. So until things get straightened out, I have to look at things differently than I would like to look at them if it was the way we've all done business. So I do not believe that, yes, why that park should get all the attention it deserves. It is not necessary to do that to perform the basic functions of the township if we run into a financial problem. If we work our way out of this, I'm all for doing whatever we need to do. But there's two aspects of this. We got to bear in mind that this is to recognize that we may have a problem and may not have a problem, but we don't know how big the problem is going to be or if it's even going to exist until a year from now or whatever is going to happen next year. Because John has revised this budget, but there's a 2021 budget that's coming, and it'll be interesting to see what that's going to look like once John has a little bit more information to make more informed decisions about what the revenue is going to be. So I just want to make sure that people don't confuse my idea now with what my idea would be in the future if everything's clear sailing. There's a big difference between two environments as far as I'm personally concerned. And right now I'm concerned about what happens with respect to the township now that forces us to change our behaviors going forward. If we have to change our behaviors going forward, a lot of things that we'd like to do have to go by the board, in my opinion.
All right, so I think we have. I think I'm reading the tea leaves here. It's an aspirational goal at this point, and we can keep it in a capital improvement program, but not have it as a must-have for the foreseeable future, and then work with friends on this idea.
Well, that's exactly a good idea.
Perfect.
And David's idea is an excellent one. If something like this, some kind of creative way of doing it, comes into play, because I think That's a pretty nifty idea that he had there, and it would make the park even better because I'm not sure that the way we figure it's going to be. And John, you raised a very good point about whether or not we need some help on exactly what we would do if we do something. So between what David's idea is and that idea, somewhere along the line, we ought to have a pretty good idea what we should do if we have the money to do it, or friends gets us the money.
I want to move along, and this isn't, I didn't spell this out as a separate sort of paragraph in the memo, but I talked about it in the assumptions. I should a memo, a separate paragraph. Ponds. So, we have postponed, the plantings at Marydale until next year, and then we've postponed the dredging at Bow Tree until next year as well. So I did have money for those projects in 2021 in the forecast. I assumed that in 2023, the Hershey's Mill Estate, that little pond at the end of Tanglewood hits Hershey's Mill Road, would get dredged. And that's, it's a little pond. It's pretty hard to do because you have to ship the dredged material off site. You can't let it dry out there. But
is that in addition to Bow Tree? What
this forecast has is Bow Tree 2021, finishing Marydale 2021, Bow Tree 2021, and then Hershey's Mill Estates 2023. But then I assumed that, and this is a big sort of assumption on my part, the Pin Oaks pond is in pretty good shape. It was dredged fairly recently. The two Bow Tree 2 and Bow Tree 3, the ones with the aerators in them, are in pretty good shape too. So this forecast doesn't include any rehabilitation work for those 3 additional ponds. Now that we've gotten our feet wet, no pun intended, on this pond work, I think it's a good idea to sort of take the pulse of the board and figure out how aggressively we want to continue to do this pond stuff, because I think they are more expensive and more involved than we thought. It doesn't work, but it is a big lift to do all 6 ponds, both financial and time management standpoint.
And I think that the pond idea was to get everything in order that we had another 30 or 35 years to go before we ever had to do it again. I would suspect, since the last 2 that you're talking about are pretty far out there in time, that rather than get into any kind of a discussion about that now, that we just put that in there someplace, and when the time comes closer, if we have to do that based on what we learn out of the environment today, if that's one of the things we have to change, then we change it. But for right now, until we find out exactly where we're going to be, I wouldn't change the plan, because the plan was a good one, and it was based on the fact that we haven't done it for a long time, and we want to get it set up so it lasts another 30 or 40 years before it has to be done again. Okay. So I would keep it in there. It's way out there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know about me. I'm not making a decision for the board. I'm just saying that this is what would be okay with me.
The issue is that some of the issues that we have in the ponds are as a result of deferred maintenance, and if we defer it more, it just exacerbates the issue. So
this stuff starts backing up on you if you defer too much stuff.
Although we did have a discussion about Hershey's Mill Estates pond, for instance, by 2024, 23, 24, it may be a wetland anyhow, because it's about 3 inches deep. So we just let it go to wetland. It might be an okay solution. So those are just things to think about in the future.
Well, one of the things that needs to be considered as well is there's a creek behind Grand Oak Lane and down by that park, and that area might need some rehabilitation at some point too. It's become very overgrown, and I'm concerned about the health of that. It also floods, and I don't know what we can do about it, but that might need an evaluation.
Where are you talking about, Michelle?
There's a creek. It's the Chester Creek, and it's behind Grand Oak Lane on the lower end of Grand Oak Lane.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
There's a park, a township park right there.
Yep.
Okay, and it overflows when there's a heavy rain.
There's been, I can tell you up until now, this is the first discussion we've had about that. So if that if that has to be brought up and figured into the thing somehow, we gotta figure out how to do that and when to do
it.
Mark and Rick, do you have any thoughts on what Michelle just said?
We need more money.
Okay. Well said.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
was it in a crisis mood that something has to be done like right away?
It's not in a crisis mode, but it's something that needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully and considered because it is something that the township's responsible for.
I guess the question has to be asked by somebody. Is that more important than some of the ponds that are out there in the future that it needs to be
No.
put in before those ponds are
No.
finished up?
No, some of the ponds have bigger issues, and this is not as big of an issue. It's something that can be put off, but it's something that has to be addressed at some point.
Now, keep in mind that the pond work was a result of a study we did by Natural Lands, and they identified some of those ponds that had, you call it bacteria and pretty serious situation. So it sounds like something we need to go take a look at and do a little bit of a quick study on it to see what the future looks like for that creek.
Would that be something Conservancy would start with?
I think that's
The challenge with Chester Creek is that the culverts for Linden Lane are too small, which causes the water to back up. And that's a fairly common occurrence throughout the township, but that causes the problem.
You get a point on the name of the creek. You didn't have it.
So, okay, so we'll get this, I guess the next steps here is get this on the agenda of the Conservancy Board. And then, they can make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors about next steps on that. The Grand Oak thing.
Do you think that I can bring it up under any other matter tonight at our meeting?
No, because it's part of the process right now. That's not in any other matter. That's a matter of fact. I mean, you got to do it. The question becomes, and I'm reflecting upon what John just said. They have to. I'm not sure that's something that they can do, because you got to blend what that is into the other things that are being done. It's not a question that that's a single entity and you're going to get everything together and go out and do it. It's more important as to what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. They might be okay on the when you're going to do it part, what you're going to do part, but they're not. They have no play in the when you're going to do it, because that depends upon what we're going to do in other things. So I don't know how far you can take this with them. They can play. They have a role, but they don't have a role as determining when we're going to do it. That's up to us.
No, but can't Conservancy recommend that a study is done?
No, I understand that. But as far as financing it,
I'm not talking about financing it. I'm just talking about doing a study in-house.
Oh, they absolutely can do that. There's no question about that. But that's as far as they can really go. And then we take over from there. That's the way I would see it.
Yeah, well, why don't you bring it up tonight, Michelle, with the board and
I will bring it up tonight.
I'll roll.
Michelle, I think it's more than just them bringing it up, and it's something that, there's a floodplain there. We have lots of structures in the flood zone there, so it's going to be a significant, sizable study to determine what needs to be done there.
I know. I just want to put it on the radar. Mark, you and I have talked about it, and we all know that it's a mess. So I just want to make sure it's on the radar is really all.
Hey, Ricky, is that what Michelle's talking about? Is that related to the issue that we had with some of the low areas over there, like the what was the chairman's firm? I can't think of the chairman's name.
Marty,
the house we did, is it all part of the same problem?
yes, that whole area drains to the Chester Creek, and it all comes in above Linden Lane.
And
So
then
that-
Mark Gordon's made a great comment, because you're talking about a really this is past. If you're talking about that, as I understand it, and I think I do, you're talking about something that's beyond what the ABC can deal with, because you're talking
I'm
about
well
a major
aware
league
of that.
throw.
It's something that Mark Gordon and I have discussed. Mark Miller and I have discussed it. Mentioned it to Rick. It's something that's on my radar, and it has to be on Conservancy's radar. we need to consider how we're gonna handle it as a township. It's a township asset.
Well, I mean, I'm with you there, but I'm just saying that I have gone through the problem of the water down there with respect to the basins and so forth. And once you get into that, you're talking about, I don't know if you were into that when you were talking to Mark and the two Marks, but you're talking about a major league project if in fact you're talking about stormwater basins on top of everything else, the size of them, and the pipes too, for that matter.
We don't know that it's a matter of drainage.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
I was saying, we don't know if it's that big a problem. It's a matter of drainage down there.
Yeah.
Oh, I have no problem with investigating it. I mean, I'm just saying if in fact it goes the way I think it's going to go, based on what problems we've had there before that Ricky knows all too well about, that the solution is pretty dynamic, pretty impressive. It's going to be a lot of money.
So I think we've got the first step of Michelle bringing it up tonight, and we'll just let the process run its course.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I have no problem with that.
Okay, let's move on to, trail connections. I didn't have anything about this in the forecast. I think we did have a meeting, 3 years ago, there was some opposition from the Marydale folks about trail connections, but does the board have any thoughts on, as the trail nears completion, about how we want to connect or next connecting?
John, this is the same thing I've said before. This is not, as far as I'm concerned, this is not an integral thing that involves the work in the township. It's not a need, it's a want. I think we just have to defer it to sometime after we find out what the financial future is going to look like as a result of what the virus is going around now. I am not prepared to do that. I don't think it's time to do that. I think it's one of those things that's really nice, but it's just too early because we may have to worry about other things first.
Okay.
My view on it is that this is again a 10-year plan, and I think once the trail is done, communities, it's going to be people that are going to want to interconnect with the trail. I think the business park will be first mover on that. I know that there was a movement in Bowtree that they were interested in figuring out a way to connect, but there was some opposition on how it would connect because of people's concerns about parking at the end of cul-de-sacs to access the trail and so on. So I think it's an issue that we're going to have to address going forward and probably in that 10-year span along the way. But we probably don't have to face it probably for another 2 years. But then I think something that we probably have to start thinking about depending on people's opinions on whether they want to connect their subdivisions or not.
Can I ask a question on that? Of Rick or John? And I'm going to surprise David by agreeing with him. As long as the trail is going through, and obviously it is, we might as well have a connection. My concern is, in order to connect, do we have to buy easements from people along the connecting trail? Is it going to cost a lot of money for easements or right of way?
That's a great question, John. And I think the simple answer is it depends which neighborhood you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no connection directly from Marydale. That's
John, real quick. Jason and I talked about this briefly, and it's a great opportunity for a significant public-private partnership here. We have two property owners that would be very amenable to because it directly benefits them. At least I know Hankin would at New Kent Apartments. Not so sure about the shopping center, but it doesn't hurt to ask, and it doesn't cost anything for us to ask, really. So we talked about this briefly just I think yesterday or the day before, that we probably need to reach out and say, hey, trail's going. Now we'd like to connect more people, which means New Kent, you got that a big population of folks there. They're going to want to use it. and they're going to want to get to it. So find a way. We already have a concept plan.
Again, repeat myself. I think it's a worthwhile venture to do. If all things were normal, I think it's appropriate to do it now. Given the fact we don't know the future is going to hold, I don't think we should worry about that at this particular time. As important as it is, I don't mitigate its importance at all, but I just don't think we're prepared to do anything now because of the financial situation that we don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm more concerned about, making sure that we're able to do what we need to do to keep the township going than I am about capital projects that have that down the line. So, the residents are going to look for us to make sure that we plow the roads, we do the streets, we do the park and all that kind of stuff. I mean, keep the park maintenance up and all that stuff. And that's what keeps East Goshen are just additions that make it even better.
I have a macro view of that, and given the study I quoted earlier, I think in order to make sure that our subdivisions stay competitive with newer ones that are built now, with newer style homes, and almost every subdivision that you see built now include interconnectivity and trails. If you look over at Greystone, they've got 7.5 miles of trails built through all their different segments over there. And we want to maintain our home values in East Goshen. And I think that interconnectivity with the trail is going to enhance the values of our homes going forward. And to the extent that a subdivision can connect to a trail, and I've seen it happen in other communities where there's resistance to a trail, then it was built, and then when houses are advertised, they advertise it as adjacent to the trail. So I think it's more accretive than a lot of other things that we could do. So I think from a planning perspective, we might want to cook in some feasibility study dollars or something to take a look at that going forward.
Does everybody realize there was a trail plan put together many years ago, about the early 90s? It's there to look at to see how much of it you want to consider, because it was done, but there was a lot of negativity at the time. Now I think that's gone away now, but that trail was a pretty good plan, and it took you all over the place.
The interesting study is the trail built in Radnor, over in that, it's only I think 3.5 mile a walking trail. I was actually involved with the Rails to Trails organization on their advisory board when that trail was proposed, and man, there were pitchforks and torches at the meetings and so on. It was really pretty bad. And now every one of those homes over there, the values adjacent to the trail are up, and they advertise that their homes are adjacent to the trail when they sell their homes, and people have embraced it and use it. So it's just kind of a typical archetypal objection to the connectivity. And unfortunately, we were developed when sidewalks, no one wanted them. And in newer communities, everybody wants them. So, and retrofitting in our area is going to be really, really difficult or never happen. So, interconnectivity with a trail could be the answer to that. So, or partial answer anyhow. So I think it's something we need to look at going forward.
I have a comment, and I don't want to see all the residents having to pay for certain private subdivisions to have trail access. So that's something that we'll have to consider at a later date. I don't have anything else to say about it at this point, but I don't want everybody to have to pay for trails that are coming from individual neighborhoods.
Well, yeah, I mean, Michelle, I understand what you're saying, and it has some truth to it. But the same thing, trails at some place are definitely going to be an asset for the township, and I mean that's a fact. I mean they always have been, or they've been for that way. And there's all kinds of mileage of trails around. That's the reason that our trail was built, because we're the first one in the Mid-County trail system. So. I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you're never going to be able to get trails to every portion of this township. It's going to be financially.
And that's exactly why this is a want. This is something that I'm going to go right back to what you said. This is a want. It's not a need. And I think we have to put it to the side for right now.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Because of the financial situation, but that doesn't mean that we won't have to do it at some point.
Okay, so just so we can keep moving, I'm kind of hearing, if I'm reading the tea leaves, you guys want me to keep this to the side for 2021, but just keep it on the radar, but not in the budget, sort of. Is that?
Oh, correct, absolutely. That's
It
the
might
plan.
become part of
Yeah.
our revised comprehensive plan.
Got it.
Right.
Okay, good.
It might take that long, but you know, that,
Yeah, I think so.
I want to move on. Hopefully this is pretty straightforward. It came up in the municipal authority meeting last month. There is a state grant program that would provide 50% grant. An Act 537 sewer study, basically that would study how and whether to extend sewer lines that currently have on-lot systems, generally in the northern parts of the township. I don't think that this is thing that the board should. Well, my recommendation is not to touch this, not to undertake such a study. I think it opens up a Pandora's box when we talk about sewering neighborhoods. Municipal authority expressed some interest in undertaking it, and I just wanted to get it on your radar and get about,
John, I think I'm an expert in this part of it because I live in one of the two communities that was talked about before. There are several people that wish that we had put the sewer system in when we voted. If they had to vote again, they would vote it differently. So I would think, I don't think that we should do a study. I think we should find out what the people think in the two communities now and if they are amenable to it, because we're going to have to do the same thing again. We've made our bed and we're going to have to live with it. We gave them a chance to vote on it, and if they had enough votes for it, we're going to do it, because it's a very controversial thing. But I will tell you that their minds have changed. Some minds have changed for sure compared to what it was when we did it. So I would think step number one would be do a survey of the two communities to see if in fact it's what the wind's blowing, because if it's not blowing in the right direction, to me there's no sense worrying about it.
So when you say the two communities, you mean Brookmont and Charter Chase and Goshen?
Correct.
Valley?
No, it wasn't Charter. It was it was Charter Chase, I guess.
I mean, I guess
it wasn't Mike. It wasn't. No, wait a minute. Charter Chase is Mike's development, isn't it? No.
Yeah. No. That's Goshen Downs.
Indian Hills.
Indian Hills.
Yeah,
So that's
you're right. It's Charter Chase and my development. So
Can I ask a
I think you
question,
want to
please?
find out what the temperature is and before you did anything further.
May I ask a question here?
Yeah.
How much of the township is covered by the sewer system?
About there's something like 530 houses that are on the on lot. So I think it comes out to like 90. I want to say 92%. Does that sound right, Mark? Is of the attached homes are on public sewer. So 8% are on lot.
Yeah,
About 500 that aren't. Ricky, that's about right, right? There's about 500
Yes.
roughly that aren't.
Thank you.
And of that 500, what we're talking about is about 200 of the 500. But I got to tell you, it's an expensive proposition.
So I just want to make sure the board, you guys are okay with that, with doing a survey.
I think you should find out the temperature, because I think I live there and I think we probably made a mistake, but that's my thinking. But I wouldn't do anything unless the residents are in favor of it, and maybe even more significantly
So
more
a
than
survey
50%.
about whether we should undertake a survey.
Yes. That's what I think, because otherwise, why would you do a study? Because there's no sense spending the money on a study if they don't want it. If they want it and they're willing to pay for it, then that's another matter.
How would you do a survey?
Yeah, I mean, you're John's asking a good question. I mean, John's asking a good question. I don't have a simple answer.
Most of
You guys, but somebody's cracking up big time. At least on my phone, I can hardly hear anything that's being said.
Mark wants to say something.
John
A lot of the
Herzog's real.
developments you're talking about the residents have already played the system. They've already redone them. So that's why they're not interested.
Yeah,
I'm
Marty,
sorry, but I didn't hear that at all.
Yeah,
so
Mark, you
what,
have an echo for some reason.
so when Mark said, a lot of the communities or residents with on-lot systems have spent a lot of money upgrading their systems.
So, yeah.
I'm-
Guy in
yeah.
Charter
Again-
Chase, with his, basically had to build a mini sewer treatment plant on his property. It was 40 grand for a single property.
Wow. Yeah.
Again, staff's recommendation, Marty, is that the board of supervisors not support this study.
I didn't hear, I can't, there's nothing coming through to me.
Staff's recommendation is that the board does not approve the study.
Not approve a survey?
Study. It was.
Oh, I don't think you should do a study. I think you should do a survey. There's a difference between the two. I think you should ask. Christ, I mean, our residents are gonna pay for it. It's not that you're gonna, once it's done, I mean, you don't have other people paying for it. I mean, you're gonna pay for it yourself. So I don't know what but I wouldn't do a study if people
Okay,
don't want it.
let me phrase it another way. Requests for people asking for their neighborhoods to be sewer. It is not something that has come up.
Well, it's come up with me. Maybe it's because I live there. I'm just saying that I can't speak for Charter Chase but I can speak for our place. There's been a number of people that have said what I said before, and I think we should at least do a survey. Now, maybe if the board doesn't want to do it, the board doesn't want to do it. But I'll have to tell the people, the board says, no, we're not going to spend the money for a survey, for at least a survey. Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's all right. But I think personally, I think the whole township should be sewer. Because you got too many problems, and the problems keep getting worse in the future, and the costs keep going up at a greater rate than inflation. So, to me, if we're going to do something, the sooner the better. But if the board doesn't feel that way, then so be it. But I definitely wouldn't do a study in the absence of a survey.
You have to all be muted. One person has to take the mute off. You're all attacking on each other. Can't hear me.
I didn't hear anything if somebody's talking.
Unless you're talking.
I didn't hear anything if anybody's talking.
John and Michelle and David, do you have any thoughts on this?
My concern about doing a survey of the residents is if it comes back positive and they want to hook up to sewer, then we got a big problem. But
No, that's what we did the last time. That's what we did. If we said yes, we'll do it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we did.
How does the cost structure work when you do that? Does it the individual homes pay for it? Do we have to do the major and then they pay for hookup, or do they pay for the whole infrastructure? How's that? I'm not familiar with how that works.
The residents end up paying the cost. The authority has the ability to contribute funds to it, but they don't have any money to contribute. So unfortunately, the authority would pick up the residents would have to pay the full cost.
Okay, so I'd be in favor of surveying the neighborhoods then and finding out what the mood of the neighborhoods are with regard to sewer hookup, and then we can go from there.
To do a survey, though, in all fairness, you're going to have to at least give some idea what the cost would be, and that means somebody's going to have to do some work to figure out what that is.
Yeah. No, it's a tricky question.
But think about it when
I totally agree.
Case,
You're never going to get these folks
his system failed, and he got involved with the Department of Environmental Protection, and he spent over $40,000. So there has to be kind of a disclosure of the consequences if your sewer system fails, and you have to put in a mini sewer treatment plant.
That's what's happened to the people that haven't had to do it yet because they haven't moved. So that's why they're getting antsy and they're pantsy over this, because they realize that the cost is going to be significantly more than it was before. And what they're trying to do is realize that people that have it done to their properties, their property values are going up, but it's not going up like you would have a sewer, because it's one of the questions everybody asks. So that's why they're getting a little antsy about this thing, because they don't want theirs to fall in that. If they sell the property, they don't want to have to do a sewer system at the same time.
Okay.
And
let's,
That's
so
what it's all about.
So for the
Michelle-
purposes of our long-range forecast, I guess we're saying that we're not going to do the $30,000 future expansion.
want us to do we want us to do a survey first. So I would think that this would still
Right.
be on the table.
Yeah.
And John, do you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
No, he doesn't. And I'd like to hear what Mark Gordon had to say. He was trying to make a statement.
I just mentioned that the same thing that you guys were talking about. There's been a lot of folks who replaced septic systems up there. And if you don't have a ballpark estimate of what they're looking for, and you just say, do you want sewers? They're all going to raise their hands, say yes. But until they realize it's going to cost them $40,000 each to connect, that's a different story.
And I was just going to make that same comment. I don't know that a survey is even worth doing.
I don't know about that, Michelle, not based on what, I mean, yes, they're putting them in because they have to. That's the reason that you should put them in, and that's the reason we should have done it before, even though we did it the way we did it, because people are finding that when they go to sell their house, they have to, I mean, almost 100% are having to put sewer systems in. Very rarely do you find a house that doesn't have to put a system in. And
I'm just going to say, we haven't done surveys for other bigger projects. I think I'm going to leave it at that for right now. I don't even think a survey is warranted. You can do what you wish.
Hey, Marty, or John, do you know if those developments like Charter Chase, do they have a homeowners association?
Charter Chase does because they have a pool. I don't think Goshen Downs does.
We don't.
Okay. I was just suggesting it might be a good idea to put it in the heads of the homeowners association to discuss with their own neighborhood, because they might be able to get a consensus on what they feel about doing it. So that might be a vehicle that you could use to get input.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe that's a good first step, instead of as an alternative survey, is for Rick, Mark, and I to speak with whoever the president, maybe vice president of Charter Chase.
Yeah.
And just have an off the record conversation. Is this something that people talk about, and bring that back to you guys?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, good. Let's move on to the albatross around our neck, the West Townway Pump Station. Rick and I met with our counterparts from West Goshen a week or two ago to look at the facility. I mean, it's clearly a rundown building. It's got electrical issues. But as we pointed out during the budget process last year and rearing its head again, their estimates for the improvements there are basically double what we originally thought. We don't have so from the 2017 bond sale, as you remember, about 60% of it was for the general fund and 40% of it was for the sewer fund, supported by sewer revenues. We don't have enough money in those bond proceeds to pay for our share of West Goshen's improvements because of these overages. The issues are, when the original engineering estimate came out, they didn't do a great job. They didn't realize the fact that they'd have to poke a hole in the roof. They'd have to drill holes through 2 levels of concrete to remove the existing pumps and put the new pumps in place. And so they gave us a number that was too low. That was the basis for what we borrowed money with. Now, we have reserve fund on the sewer side that we could essentially borrow from ourselves to cover this cost. So it's not as if we need to borrow money in order to pay the bill. West Goshen certainly wants to apply for any grants that might be available. Knock on wood, there will be some additional round of stimulus grants, that would help offset those costs. If we do get some sort of grant funding, then all of our funding problems go away. The bottom line is we don't have enough money on the sewer side of those bond funds to pay for our share of that improvement. And just so folks are aware that that pump station is in West Goshen. It's owned by West Goshen Sewer Authority and operated by the West Goshen Sewer Authority. But 54% of the flows that go through there come from East Goshen. So therefore, we're responsible for 54% of the capital.
It's 21, isn't it? And the flow's 21, Rick?
No. The overall, no. The number.
Oh, you're talking about just the one area.
Operating, that's how we pay for operating costs at the plant. That number bounces around from 15 to 20%.
Hey, Rick, have you had a conversation with Sean or anybody in West Goshen about your proposal of, the kind of the modifying, doing the drive shaft and not replacing the pumps?
Yes, we have met with them, and we're waiting for them to get some information, and we'll talk again.
Okay, so this number might be a bit lower if your thoughts are adopted.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the odds of that happening, Rick? Do you know?
Well, I think we have some leverage, and we'll just have to exercise it.
We leverage in the fact that we if you don't get us to agree, then you're screwed.
Well,
do we have another meeting with them to, do you think we've had adequate meetings with them that they understand that they're just getting a proposal? So we don't have to, I was thinking about maybe you and me and Mark and maybe Mike Lynch and go sit down with Sean and their engineer and chat through this a little bit. Or has that meeting already happened?
Well, I think we may need it at some point, but right now we've asked them to give us some additional information, and then once we get a response,
we could do that meeting. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Do we have a long-term contract with them right now that we're in the middle of?
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Can you tell me what term that is?
Well, it was for purposes of, I'm not sure, actually. Rick, do you know the answer to that?
the contract runs as long as we transport sewage to West Goshen.
Right. It's a perpetual contract.
So is there any chance that our current, maybe Mark Miller will be able to tell us, is there any chance that our current system can take additional load right now?
No.
Our contract requires that the Chester Creek flow goes to West Goshen, and we do not have capacity at Ridley to take it.
So,
okay.
Michelle, here's another. So 5 years ago, let's say, there was a study in engineering was done. So right now we're sending about 750,000 gallons to West Goshen, and we have rated capacity there of 1 million gallons. Okay, so we're below that threshold. But if for whatever reason we got close to that million threshold, which would be our that cap, we did a study so that to create a new pump station, build a new pump station on Reservoir Road that would divert some flows that are currently going to West Goshen to Ridley Creek. Now, the cost of that actual pump station would be probably in the $2 million range. But it doesn't change the fact that the contract right now has us with reserve capacity of West Goshen of 1 million out of a total capacity of 6 million. So we'd still have that 1/6 capacity issue. Does that make sense? So there is a feasible path to divert more flows to Ridley Creek, but it's still technically cheaper to send stuff to West Goshen because of the economies of scale with how large their plan is than it is to Ridley Creek.
Okay, and can you tell me what, at this point, the total amount you think this project is going to cost us? Is it going to cost us $1.5 million? Is it going to?
Yeah, it's like $1.7 million. It's like a 3.4 million total, or something like that.
So about 1.7, and then what did you just say?
Out of like 3.3 or so.
Okay. And over what term is that supposed to be? Are we going to be on the hook to give them half now and half later? Is it something?
No, the
where-
way the contract works is that when the bid is awarded, we put the money up. We put our share of the money up.
So the whole amount goes up when the bid goes out?
Well, when the bids are received, they are awarded.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay.
The biggest problem, so there's no, I mean, just to be transparent about this, the biggest problem is that West Goshen, East Goshen, and West Whiteland all put sewage into their system. However, there's no active, their board is their board, period. It's the West Goshen board. There's no, we're not on their board. West Goshen's not on their board. West Town's not on their board. They control it. And as a matter of fact, if everybody went on the board, you still wouldn't have 50% equity in the thing. So I'm just telling you that you have some leverage, but you don't have as much leverage as you would think you have, because they run the place. And unfortunately, Doc White was the one who was behind it, and they did not, I shouldn't say do, they did not run the plant the way we do, where we have reserves and the whole kind of thing. So things got a little bit out of hand. So it's partly because of that things are so expensive. But it is what it is, and we have contractual obligations with them. And yes, we can do certain things, but there's certain things we can't do. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. And of course, this all, I think, John, you said at one point, if we have to borrow the money for this, it goes to the sewer users, but it's not as big a number as you would think it is. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, amortized are like one point. Well, we'd have a shortfall of about $900,000 in the bond fund. So $900,000 amortized over 20 years. What are we talking? Let's say 60,000 per year. Like, I'm doing the math in my head real quick.
That's all right.
Something like, yeah, it's like $2.50 per quarter per year.
Yeah, right. It's not a huge number when you work out the numbers, but it's scary when you think about it. But the worst of the problem is you don't have any input into the decision-making process, really. Because they could say to us, it is what it is, period, boom. And you have to do what you have to do.
I'd like to just say that if we're not represented on that board, perhaps we need to make a plan to move away from this arrangement.
Well, we've talked about that. The problem is you'd have to get down and talk to them. If they don't want to change, they don't want to change. And
but if we want to change, why
I
can't we
certainly
change?
don't mind. I know that some of those guys, David knows some of those guys, and we can go down and talk to them. But up until now, it has been we like it the way it is, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but if we don't like it the way it is, why do we have
that's
to
right.
continue to
But
send
we
the
don't have
stuff
any
there?
leverage. We don't have any leverage to get it changed.
We don't. The leverage is we can take our stuff someplace else.
No, you got a contract.
Well, I mean, I think the larger issue is that for us to divert all of our flows somewhere besides West Goshen would require the building of however many pump stations, the installation.
Yeah, you're talking about a lot of capacity.
And we wouldn't be talking about $900,000. We'd be talking about $40 million. I mean,
I think they're two. I think
throwing a number out,
Ricky,
but
aren't they 2/3 of the capacity in East Goshen?
Yeah, roughly.
They handle, yes, almost 2/3 of our sewage, but
Yeah.
the likelihood of
You're talking-
trying to build a new sewer plant to handle our own fluids on the Chester Creek is ludicrous. They never
First
give
of all, you
permission to do.
Well, first of all, you have to figure out where to put it.
They would never give you permission to build a brand new sewer plant on the Ridley Creek.
Right. Exactly. That's because of the phosphorus problem that they had, right? Among other things.
No, it's just DEP. They're not going to give you a permit to build a brand new sewer plant when you already have a perfectly viable one.
Incidentally, so everybody knows this, at one point there was a conversation about going through West Goshen over to
Borough.
West the
Borough.
town center over there, which they had when the I forget who it was left. They left about 600,000 gallons of capacity available. So there was capacity there to use. However, West Goshen, as I recall, West Goshen said, no, you're not coming through here. And to go any other way but through West Goshen was cost prohibitive. But there was about 600,000, and that's, for those that knew Senya, it was pretty much right behind Senya's place. And, but it was short-lived. It was a short-lived analysis because once West Goshen said no, you couldn't get there from here. But that was looked at anyway. And I don't know if it's worth looking at it again or not.
I'd like to move on because we're getting close to noon, and it would be helpful to have some of the people on the line who've been waiting around and have a chance to speak. So I think the way we've left it is we're waiting on information from the West Goshen staff, the staff level about Rick's drive shaft idea. Once we get information back on that, let's regroup on this and move forward and continue on. But let's continue to have the conversation about, how this is going to be paid for. I don't think we need to make a decision today. Is that fair?
Yep.
The other thing is the same one that Michelle brought
That's
up.
fair.
That the supervisors should go down there and see if they're willing to incorporate some of the other users on their board.
Yeah. Okay. And last but not least, the only last thing I have on my list of to-do things is, or things to talk about is, we've used AMS as our financial and permitting system for 20 years or so, certainly before I got here. AMS, I liken it to like the old, your 1995 Ford pickup truck that's rusted out. But miraculously it starts every cold winter's day. With that said, I'm concerned about the long-term viability of AMS. I don't think it's getting updated at the way that it needs to be updated. I don't know what their long-term plan is, the company's long-term plan is to make sure that we'll continue to receive support for it when the current owners sort of start to retire. So I did include in the forecast, a figure of $100,000 because it is a big investment of us upgrade or transitioning to a new financial software package. And AMS touches every aspect on the admin side of our lives, from permitting to payroll to general ledger to accounts receivable to accounts purchasing to AP, accounts payable. Excuse me. So it's a big important undertaking, but I think it's important that we think about it.
David, do you want to give yours and my reaction when John explained that to us when we had the pre-meeting?
Yeah, because this is a tool that we use for virtually everything to run the township, and I think that it's necessary on John's recommendation that the AMS is getting a little clunky and the future of software updates and support is questionable. Now is probably a good time to start to think about replacing the system with a more capable modern system, because if you can't get your bills out and collect them and account for them, you got a problem. So I think it's important, and I think that's an expense that we ought to. It's in the forecast, and we ought to include it and make that change.
I have a couple of questions with this.
Sure.
Is this going to be compatible with your older equipment?
You mean, will we be able to migrate the data from AMS into the new system?
Yeah. Is it going to be able to be inherited? Is it going to cooperate with your older printers, your older computers?
It's software compatible with your hardware.
Oh, is the software? Well, I mean, it would have to be. That would be as part of the bid process. That would be a requirement that it would be.
Okay, and what kind of training are you going to be required to get for this? I mean, it's going to be a systemic change, so
yeah,
I guess everybody's going to need to have a few hours of training on that.
Certainly, I mean, as part of any bid package we put out, training would be. I mean, Michelle, we're not at the point at which I can say we need, Chris Boylan needs 10 hours of training, and
okay, no, that's fine.
12, but as part of the bid package, we'd have a provision about
training. Okay.
Anyone else?
No, I'm with David. David summarized it very nicely. Because I'll tell you, if the AMS system went down, we were in deep six. That's the way I looked at it, because that's how I explained it in the meeting to us. I would think that it's almost a no choice. We have to move forward and get it done and hope the hell that everything works in the meantime.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
You know, well, I'm just saying that's what David and I conclusion we reached. I don't know about the others, because Michelle and John weren't there. But that's the conclusion. David said it perfectly.
Unfortunately, that's one of the problems with having only two people on that financial committee. You know, we're kind of not looped in.
You can't have any more. I mean,
Well,
otherwise, you have to have public meetings.
No, that's really what
There's certain things you have to do a certain way, or you're screwed.
Okay, but let's focus on the question at hand. Michelle and John, are you comfortable with that? Me, as I develop the budget, are you comfortable with that expense for next year?
Yep.
Okay.
It has to be done. It has to be done. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all that I have. Marty, unless you have anything to add, is this a good time to get public comment? Or does the board have any further? Does the board have any further kind of instructions?
No, if the board doesn't have any more questions, then we should go to whoever.
I have one thing that I want to bring up real quickly, and John and Marty and I talked about this right now, and I alluded to it in the beginning of the meeting. You know, we do a deficit budget basically to figure out what we need. We're good stewards of the money. But if we have our capital reserve funds and our 25% rainy day fund, we kind of balance our budget at the end of the year using those funds, and that's why we run out of money in 2028. So John made a comment in the meeting, and I kind of embraced his thought process, and that is that we ought to begin as a township to put forth a budget, a balanced budget every year instead of a deficit budget. And I support that concept. And my thought is that 2021 is really going to be difficult because of the COVID-19 and the revenue, the unknowns right now, and deferred maintenance that's coming from 2020 into 2021. I think that we'll probably still have to have a deficit budget. But I'd like to propose that we start thinking about a balanced budget in 2021. And what that's going to mean, though, is probably some belt tightening along the way to be able to achieve a balanced budget and rebuild the capital surplus and reserve, or at least maintain our 25% ratio. So I just like to kind of throw that out as a overarching idea.
David, I think David and I have a little bit of a difference of opinion on this. We balance the budget anyway by taking whatever the deficit is from the reserves that we have in the operating fund budget. So our budget is always balanced. It has to by law. So the question I have is, I don't understand what you're going to do that's different than what we're already doing, so I can make an informed decision. So can you explain that to me? Because I don't understand it.
Well, I'm just saying that we need to maintain the 25%, and we're using that right now to balance it. I know it's a balanced budget, but we're using surplus and reserves to balance the budget. And if we
well, you're going to do that no matter what you do.
But
I don't see what the difference is.
We go into the budget at the beginning of the year budgeting a deficit. So basically, what I'm saying is there some way we could start to think about going into the year with a balanced budget that does not anticipate using surplus and reserve, and then if we need it, it's there for us to have. That's just,
well, the problem is you're going to have to cut something out of the budget.
Yep.
Every year you got a deficit budget. The only way you can do it is you put money in or take money out.
Yep.
That's
So
exactly
if
what
you
he's
take
saying.
money out, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to figure out what you want to take out. I mean, we already came up with that $400 and some odd thousand now, and that's not even the whole amount that we'd have to take out.
That's right.
I mean, I tell you, I just don't understand it. We have the reserve because we built it up over time, because we used the windfalls that we got that Ricky referred to earlier judiciously. And at some point, we can't keep going forever without a tax increase. It's impossible, because one way or the other, you're going to use up the surplus that you have. So to me, you have to figure out when that's going to be. And ahead of that, you got to put in small increments of tax increases to get where you want to be in whatever year that's going to be, so that people don't have a big tax all at once, because that's the world's worst thing to do. I am not an advocate of taxing people, but at the same time, and looking at what's going on, that at least I know from what John's numbers are showing, there's a point in time when we just, no matter what we do or how we do it, we're done.
Marty,
And I believe that that's the case. Now, if there's something different, than I'm missing something, then I need to know that, David, because it seems to me that if you either subtract or add in, that's the only way to go. And I don't see how you're going to be able to subtract, because I don't think we went through the budget a few years ago, and weaned out anything that we thought that needed to be weaned out. We're pretty much down to what we need to run the operation. And I don't know what we're going to do differently.
It's a worthwhile exercise, I think, that I could do. I mean,
well, you can do it. I mean, sure, you ought to do it. We ought to be doing it. That's part of the long-range planning. But I think that we're going to find out that we're pretty much where we need to be.
I guess my view is that the 25% surplus and reserve is, our, as we refer to part of it as our rainy day fund, and to build a budget around using it seems counterintuitive. It seems like that should be a rainy day fund if we have a untoward event that causes us to, like a police settlement or something that causes us to have to dip into it. Then it's
John's
there.
talking about a 25% in the operating fund budget, not counting the reserves. That's just the operating fund budget he's talking about. He's not.
Can we hear from Michelle and John about David's proposal? Because it's getting.
As far as I'm concerned, David is 100% right. Don't faint, David, but I think you're right on. And it's Marty, it's only an exercise. If John Altshell can do it and will do it, we ought to have that to compare.
I don't have any problem with it being done.
Spreadsheet,
I don't have any problem with it being done, but I don't know what we're going to cut.
Let's see what it looks like if we try to cut back. As far as it goes,
I'm all for that. I have no problem with that.
Want to tax people? I don't know who else you think you're taxing when you put the mill rate up. That's exactly what you're going to do. So I want to avoid a tax increase if it's possible. And I agree with David. I think we should maintain the reserves as much as we can. Living off the reserves, which is what, again, this spreadsheet is talking about. That's dangerous, especially if we live off the reserves, draw them down, and then have an unanticipated variance in expenses. Then we're in trouble. I'd love to see John do this exercise.
I have no problem with the exercise. The question is, what are you going to do after the exercise if there's nothing to cut, or there's very little to cut?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay. So I agree to a certain extent. I think we do need to draw down the funds a little bit because we have a lot of excess funds right now. One supervisor at one point said that we're not into austerity budgeting. I think we are. This is the time we're looking at running out of money at some point. Now we have to look at austerity budgeting. We have to be more mindful of what we're spending money on. And we have to consider extending, I hate to say it, street paving. Possibly every street needs to be extended another year. And I think that we have to look at the sinking fund when you're putting monies into the fund for vehicles and other equipment, possibly having to extend it by 6 months to a year. I think we are in that austerity budgeting phase. That's all I've got to say.
So I think I got the marching orders, and I just want to clarify what David said. You'd like to have this target by 2022. Recognize?
Just kind of see what it would look like if we model the forecast like that.
I think it should be done. It's a responsible thing to do. I just question whether or not anything's going to happen as a result of it, because we've already done this before.
It doesn't matter. I think it's a good exercise, and I think John needs to see what he can do.
Right.
Well, there's a difference between what David's talking about, I believe, and what you're suggesting. I think there's two different philosophies there, and I'm not, I think that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if anything else.
Well,
But
Michelle's
as far as
getting
David's
into the,
concerned, I think do it and see what happens.
yeah, Michelle's getting into the how would we do it. And all I'm thinking about is, let's take a pass at doing a forecast with
Yeah,
some estimates,
exactly.
and then we'll figure out how to do it.
Yeah,
When
there's a
we
what
get
and a
the,
how.
the board.
Yes,
and
you're
break.
right, David. That's true. That's where I was headed. But the fact is,
Yep.
the exercise is important. I think we need to stretch ourselves a little bit more.
Okay, Michelle and John, you can no longer call me a tax and spend Democrat.
I never called you a tax and spend Democrat.
Somebody must have.
Is any other
I
board?
probably did,
Anyhow,
but I think
Does
you're on the
anybody,
right
wait a
track.
minute, does anybody have anything else to go? Because we got to get our residents to say something, and if they have any comments, we'll take them and then go home.
I'm good.
Okay, nobody
I
have
have
anything?
nothing else to add.
Susan, does anybody up there have anything they want to ask?
We have 3 residents on the line. They have been unmuted. Kate, do you have anything to add?
I
Or to
do. I'd
ask?
like just first of all to thank everybody for the work that you're doing. I'm in awe at the vast amount of information you oversee and the work that you're doing. My concern, I wrote a letter, is really about the Paoli Pike Trail, and I think I've heard today that the gist of some people is that carefully manage the budget in these times, and with regard to that, I'd like to mention that I think I'm hearing that the Paoli Pike Trail is costing us a good bit of money, and I'd like to request that we discontinue spending money on the trail. I'm not in favor of the trail, and I think that the times call for us to tighten our belts. And my opinion is that we're spending too much on the trail, and I'd like to try and convey that opinion about cutting back and scaling back our expenses with regards to the trail.
Thank you for that, Kate. And thank you for sending that email explaining that to us this weekend.
Is there any way to do that, to cut any expenses? Is that something that the
That's
committee
a
would
great
look at?
question. That's a great
I have to be
question. I
honest with
think
you,
that
Kate, the trail's-
John is going to have to be the one to start looking at that.
Well, I mean, Kate, yeah, thanks. I mean, just so we're clear, the segment that goes past Marydale, so that's technically segment E, I guess, or excuse me, C, I guess. But basically from Reservoir Road all the way to North Chester Road. So that was funded, both the construction and the inspection, which is done by, the construction is being done by Alan Myers. The inspection is being done by a company called Transportation Planning and Design. That's all funded by grants. That's 100% grant funded. What the expenses that we incurred for that work, and they were substantial for engineering and right-of-way acquisition and surveying. Those costs have already been incurred. So the work that's really being done now is all grant supported. So there's the contract has been awarded. So there's really not there's not an outlay of funds for which we won't be reimbursed for. Does that make sense?
Yes, but what about the future segments? And
so yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that, so we have an additional 473. So 3 years ago, we issued bonds for a variety of projects, including the soft costs. And when I say soft costs, I mean engineering, right-of-way acquisition, surveying of the trail. So the board has already essentially outlaid that money for those soft costs, awarded contracts for the engineering stuff. There's still a little bit of right-of-way acquisition that needs to be done with those bond funds. But the marching orders that staff has from the board is that we're not going to spend local taxpayer dollars on any of the construction costs. So I'm operating with my modeling and such that none of these construction is going to have a net impact on township dollars. We are, the bonds have already been issued. We're already paying debt service on them. So that money is essentially, spent and accounted for in all the modeling.
I guess I somewhat understand that. I guess one follow-up question. Do I understand the trail in and of itself in that it crisscrosses Paoli Pike? We are asking pedestrians to crisscross Paoli Pike when they use the trail. Is that correct?
Correct.
And,
Yes.
And
At Boot Road.
yeah, to me that concept just seems flawed. I feel like there's so much traffic on Paoli Pike, and I'm really concerned about asking pedestrians to cross in that traffic. And then I look forward and I think of, the potential for accidents and lawsuits and death as we had in front of East Goshen Park. That's one main concept that I've just struggled with all the way through on Paoli Pike Trail, is that it's a very, very busy road, and we're asking our residents to put themselves in jeopardy, and therefore putting the township in jeopardy of covering those. I think it's like a foolhardy plan to have them walking in traffic.
Kate, it's Michelle, and I agree with that. I don't like the fact that people are crossing 352, and I don't like the fact that they're crossing Boot Road. I have a big concern about the safety component as well. I'd like to see an overpass. I think that the plan is flawed as well.
Yeah, so those are my concerns, and I'm concerned that we're doing this through whatever ways that John, the group has budgeted and projected. I just feel the plan is initially flawed. I know I'm late to the party in understanding this and voicing my concern. I do feel there are many residents that share this opinion that are not quite understanding the scope of the trail. I think that was the number of people that showed up in December at that meeting. I think there are many people that are like that, and I'm concerned about cost. I think it's time for tightening our belts and trying to cut costs. And I think the plan itself of asking people to walk in a highly trafficked area is a fundamental flaw and a concern for future expense and liability. And I guess that's the gist of my point.
Well, Kate, the problem that exists today, and it's an important problem. Our folks did the part from 352 up to Line Road. That's done. It's done. It's in. It's finished. Alan Myers is creating all the work that's being done there in the middle of the road now down to Reservoir Road. That contract's been let through PennDOT to Alan Myers, and it's being done today. And it's planned to be finished in sometime in September if it all goes well, or a little later if it doesn't go well. And that's done. The what we call Section A and B is down below Reservoir Road. Some of that's been done. Some of the soft cost stuff has been done. We're looking to try and find grant money for the construction costs. So you're other than down there with respect to construction from Reservoir Road or Enterprise Drive, which is the same thing, you're all the way up to Line Road. Effectively, you're either under construction, or you're completed, and you have contracts that are obligations. So there's really nothing to cut. But what I said before about the comprehensive plan becomes really significant when you're talking about the trail and town center and so forth, because that's in the comprehensive plan, and it was done with residents knowing what was going on, invited to participate, and I'm sure that the next time people will look at that. But right now, that's where it's coming from. Now, the trail itself is not in the end of the day, the trail is part of the mid-county trail system, which goes into West Ayrshire and comes out and goes over. It goes over to Exton and over to Downingtown. That sooner or later will be completed by all the townships that are along the way. I, serving on the Chester County Planning Commission, asked the question of them: does it make sense for East Goshen to go first? And their answer was absolutely, because you're going to get much of the grant money, and it turned out to be the case. So that was a wise decision. Now, whether or not you want to be involved in the trail, that was part of what was decided, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago when the comprehensive plan was put in place, and that was just doing it. And then, the same thing was true with the town center and the whole idea. So, it's a very difficult thing. When you look at the trail now, there's no way to not build the trail because it's being built. The only thing is, and most of the work or most of the legwork has been done or will be done shortly on below Enterprise Drive. So I don't know what there is to cancel. It's
Marty?
a little, you said it's late in the game. Yes, it's not only late in the game, but I think the game's over. And
Marty,
I think it is
Marty,
what it is.
we got other people on the line waiting to talk. It's after
I
12.
hear you. Anybody else?
Christina, do you have anything?
Yes. Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So just wanted to tie into some comments about the comprehensive plan. If I heard correctly, it sounds like it's going to be reviewed again in 2024.
Yep.
And I would just offer the suggestion that maybe we take a look at it a little bit sooner than that, perhaps in 2022 or 2021, because I feel like the events that have transpired here in East Goshen and in Chester County, namely the building of the pipeline right through the center of our town, and of course coronavirus, have really transformed our township in substantial ways. And I dare say that the comprehensive plan may be outdated now in substantial ways. And I think that we have to start looking at East Goshen in two ways. There's version 1, which was pre-pipeline and pre-coronavirus, and I think that we have to start looking now at what East Goshen version 2 looks like, post-coronavirus, post-pipeline, and really start to think progressively about what this new version of East Goshen looks like. And even though a lot of work was put into the making of that plan, and I want to acknowledge that because it sounds like a lot of time was spent and a lot of input was gathered. But I think we also have to realize that just because there's a plan on the books doesn't mean that it can't be revised, and it shouldn't be revised when major events happen.
Christina,
think we
I'd
need
like
to-
to make a comment on that, if I could, just real quick. At any time, the comprehensive plan can be amended by the township.
Yes, and so what I think what we need to do is start really having real conversations about how, for instance, with coronavirus, one of the things that Commissioner Moskowitz said in a very informative article was that population density has everything to do with how easily the virus was being transmitted. And that's how she successfully moved us from red to yellow phase. And so as we think about, how do we keep or maintain our density from getting more and more and more looking like Exton and Delaware County, which hasn't moved, I think we need to start thinking about how we value our open space, how we preserve that open space, how we maybe gain more open space as it becomes more available, like East Bradford does. So that's just one conversation to have. I think we also have to start talking about things that we do in recognizing the pipeline. I know this is something I talked about, with the Planning Commission, and making sure that that is incorporated in projects that are going forward. I know that there was a lot of talk about the trail and stuff like that. I'm not a person that just kind of like walks around for recreation. That's not how I would use it. But when I think of the trail, of course, all I think about is possible means of evacuation. So, for me, it's not necessarily a want, but it would fall into like the need category. So I kind of think of it in a different way. I just wanted to put it out that way. And so in that sense, I would be interested in talking about it And I would maybe be interested in seeing those neighborhood connections for other reasons. Just want to throw that out there. So that's all I have to say. I'd like to see the comprehensive plan reviewed in totality a little bit sooner rather than later. So if you would
Christina, the
consider that,
problem-
I would like that.
The problem with that is, it's not a problem, it's the reality that, you gotta be at the 10-year marker out. Because the county has a vision partnership program, they call it, which is where you get money, which was what we got the last time. And it's an expensive proposition if you took the whole burden on yourself. So you can't really go early. You can go early, but you're gonna have to pay for it. And that becomes a very, very expensive proposition. I think it was like, was $60,000 or $1,000 or more the last time. And it would be the same thing all over again. So you can do it, but you run the risk of not being able to get any money for it, which is probably going to be a fact. So you got to be a little bit careful how you do things, because it affects your ability to get money.
I disagree. It's not something that has to cost any money at all. And it's something that can be revised at any time. It's an amendment to the comprehensive plan 2015. And it's something that can be done. It's permitted by law in the township code.
Well, I mean, it depends upon how it's approached and how, I mean, the county's the one that, you gotta go through. And there's more of these things being asked for today than there was before, because of the circumstances everybody's facing. So it becomes a greater burden on the county, and the county hasn't got any increase for years in that particular program. So you keep having less and less people involved. And that's all I'll say on that. There's nothing more to say. You got to get the money from the county. That's the only place you can get it. And Michelle's right. You can do certain things, but there's certain things you can't do if you want to do the whole thing. So
Well, maybe what we as a township can do, and the board certainly can just encourage the ABC boards to look at their own planning documents and make sure that they are revising them to update and incorporate both the pipeline and the coronavirus, because I think that, these have been transformative impacts on our township. And it was really amazing to me when I went to that planning commission meeting, and nobody even seemed to have incorporated it or have even been aware that we had the risk assessment. And so I just think that there has to be more co-working between ABC boards, and I think that I just think that we have to be really taking into account these two major events that have occurred in our township, and making sure that we're incorporating them and revising our documents, and just not using old planning documents or old planning plans just because that's what we had and that's what we developed and that's what we put work into. I think we need to make sure that we're constantly revising and incorporating and really welcoming the feedback of residents on a continual basis, and using survey tools. I think that's a big thing, because that event that happened in December, when the township building was overwhelmed by residents, was really showing us that they wanted their voices to be heard, and that we needed to do a better job of bringing them into the dialogue. So the more that we reach out through survey tools, or we can't really have discussion groups right now because of coronavirus, but we have a lot of tools at our disposal through Nextdoor and through email and electronic communications. And I think that we just have to make a commitment this year and going forward to start using them more effectively. So that's all I have to say.
Anybody else?
Leo, you're up.
Okay,
Yeah,
John, it's ready for any other matter.
No, Leo, no, we have Leo.
Yeah. First of all, I want to reiterate and thank Kate and Christina for their comments. I value their comments. I think more residents need to get involved with the township. Christina is correct. There are people who are starting to wake up to see what's going on, and they do want to get involved. They don't necessarily want to get involved by getting on a board or anything or any of the ABCs, but definitely they want their words heard. I do have some concerns about future expenses in the near future. One thing I did not see today, which I was actually find rather interesting, was nothing was mentioned about the overlay. So that tells me, okay, the overlay must be boxed up, taped up, put on a shelf, because I would anticipate that the overlay would cost money if you guys try to open up that box again and start to evaluate that this year. I don't see anything mentioned about the costs associated with that in this plan. In regards to the trail,
Leo, can I ask for clarification? What costs are you would
any costs? Period. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's exactly my point. There's nothing mentioned in this meeting today about that. Okay, I see other things in there. I would think that you would probably talk about the overlay if, in fact, there's any cost, whether it be $1 or thousands of dollars. Okay, I would anticipate that brought out during this meeting, but it wasn't. In regards to the trail, it sounds to me that the train has already left the station. You guys have already spent our money, okay? Whether it be grant or taxpayers' money via a bond. I get that, okay? Damage is done. People didn't wake up fast enough to understand that aspect of a reality. But I want to make sure going forward now that no more money is spent. Because you just turned around and said that the grants is paying for the current construction. I want to know, are any township employees involved in any way, shape, or form with this construction? Because if so, that's revenue spent. That's wages that are spent. Okay, so therefore, money has been spent beyond the grant. And I want to make sure no more money is going to be spent on this trail this year beyond what has already been to date. And anything that I want to know also, how much money have we paid out in both via grants, bonds, taxpayers' money? I want to break out, and if I have to file a right to know, I will, but I want to know every nickel and dime, who got that money, where did it go, and at the end of the day, how much is it going to cost the taxpayers of East Goshen? I don't want to hear about the bond. I don't want to hear about grants. Take that off the map. I want to know dollars and cents that it's going to cost us now. In regards to grants are money that comes from a different bucket. You just simply, basically spread that across to all taxpayers through Pennsylvania, which leads me to one last issue. You say that East Goshen wants to be the first to build a trail. I went and talked to West Goshen, found out there is some indications of a potential trail, but it would be on the far other side. It would be on the side that's on next to Westchester Borough, coming out of Westchester Borough, going into West Goshen. There's no connection to East Goshen's trail, and there's no connections on the Westtown side of East Goshen. And then you talk about, hey, we're proud. We went out and we stole all the money from the grants. The probability of anybody else getting grant money is slimmer, but hey, thank goodness we were stepped forward and we got all that money first. I feel like we went to a bank and we just basically robbed the bank of all of its assets and said, screw the rest of the people. I think that's wrong, okay? To even think that, we should keep the load down because we don't want anybody to know that we got that money. It's sad that we have to think like that, okay? That's the wrong way to think about it. To think that we were the first to do it and no one else can do it is like building a bridge in Alaska and saying we have no roads going to it, but hell, we got a bridge. That's a wonderful thing. I don't like that thinking. So again, I value your time in doing this whole entire plan today. I think that it's flawed. I think there's a lot of things that have fallen off the plate here that haven't been analyzed or haven't been factored in. And I don't want to wake up tomorrow saying, oh, we forgot this, we forgot that, and then things start adding up. By the time December rolls around, we talk about the budget, we're going to look at a minus beyond what we're seeing right now due to the virus and so forth. So I'm sorry, I don't want to get in the soapbox, but the bottom line is I am kind of upset when I hear things like this. And I do value your time, everybody, to getting involved with this. I just think that perhaps maybe either one, this meeting was premature, or two, this meeting is lacking a lot of substance. So
Leo,
again, thank you.
Just so you know, whoever you spoke to in West Goshen doesn't know what the hell they're talking about because there is a connection. The second thing is,
I actually saw the blueprints. I actually saw the plans. I was actually given copies of the plans.
I can tell you for a fact that since it's a county function, there's a connection between East Goshen and West Goshen, or the thing would never be done as part of the Mid-County Expressway. Secondly, the board early this year made a decision that nothing would be done and discussed about the T&D thing until after the construction is done for the middle section of the trail, which is going on now. So whether it's September, October, November, somewhere along the line, the thing will be reborn and a decision has to be made whether it's going to go forward or not go forward at that particular time. So yes, it's been put to bed, but it's been put to bed because fortunately at this time, because of the virus thing, it wouldn't have been able to be done anyway. So it won't come to surface until the project is done by Alan Myers, or we can get people in a facility, because I don't know what's going to happen to the virus. The virus may be still going on, so it may be further out than that when you're all said and done. But that's what the plan is for now. But as far as the trail is concerned, yes, it gets hooked up to go into Westchester and eventually over to Downingtown and Exton. That's the Mid-County Trail.
Well, I would love to see the copy of that aspect of the trail,
you can
because
call the planning commission and get it. I mean, it's that simple. They're the ones that are responsible for it.
Marty, I can chime in real quick. This is Mark, and so what I believe Marty is referring to is the Mid-County Bicycle and Pedestrian Concept Plan we did a master plan back in 2011 that did show a connection. That was a plan, and I'm not sure what West Goshen is deciding to do. I just went through a comprehensive plan update that did include some trail language in their plan. I have not seen that plan yet, but I'm anticipating that there is something. I do not know if they're going to move forward with any connections to East Goshen's Paley Pike Trail. The initial indications we had were that they probably were not going to go and use the route that they originally planned back in 2011, because the right-of-ways are so difficult to acquire along Paley Pike in West Goshen. There was some kind of, there was a plan that they were thinking about going up Airport Road and through the arbors next to the airport, then over towards their park. That's an option. Leo, I haven't seen those plans. I'd be interested to look at them with you and talk to you about, any connections that we can facilitate on our end of that. But that's what I've heard from West Goshen. I did talk with their planner when they were doing their planning for their comprehensive plan.
Yeah, the West, I can tell you without taking a lot of time to do it, the planning commission was involved in that comprehensive plan, so they know what's going on, and they're aware of the need to get the trail through West Goshen into Westchester in order for this thing to work. So that's that. So you are correct, Mark, about it. The first pass was they went a different direction, and I think they still have that thought that they had on to going up Airport Road and over. I think that's still on the I think that's still on the table, but I'm not sure of that. But I know the connection is for sure. And eventually it all has to be worked out. When they're going to do their section, I don't really know. But
just to be clear, let me ask you a question here, Marty. Just to be clear, there is no existing connection right now in West Goshen, right?
There's plan to. There's plan to be where ours ends.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah, they're supposed to connect to where ours ends, and it goes on. Now, originally it was going to go over Paley Pike, but that's not going to work. And so they're thinking about going up Airport Road and over. So it's a different route, but they got to get down to the same place to start. In other words, there's not a gap in the plan. So that's that. Anybody else have anything? Anybody up? Any of your folks up there, Dance? Or Susan, I mean?
No, I think we're good.
Everything's good? Okay, John, any other matter? Anybody have any other matter?
No.
Nope. I'll entertain a motion for dismissal, and away we go.
I move adjourn the meeting.
I'll
Adjourn the meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody.
Thank you.
John, thank you.